Thank you, folks. We have quorum on the dot, 7 p.m. Let everyone settle in for a minute. All right, I'll open the meeting now at 7:01. So we'll move to the first item of do a statement of acknowledgement. We'd like to acknowledge that the land that we're meeting on tonight is the traditional lands for the Kaurna people, and we respect their spiritual relationship with their country. We also acknowledge the Kaurna people as the custodians of the Greater Adelaide region, and that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still as important to living Kaurna people today. Attendance record, we have multiple apologies. So Councillor Lorna, Councillor Shanks, Deputy Mayor Cody Davies and Councillor Samble is on leave. Everyone else is here and we just make quorum. So if anyone needs to go to the toilet, be aware that that the quorum will lapse. Yep. We might need to take a break, so seek leave to take a break if you need to leave the chamber. Are there any motions to grant leave of absence? Nope. And Councillor Sam was currently on, no non-attendance. So on to number 3, our public open forum. I haven't received any slips, but is there anyone wishing to speak in public open forum? No. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? No, there being none, we'll move on to confirmation of the minutes. We've got an officer's recommendation here. Is someone happy to move the minutes? Mayor Redman, happy to move. Seconder, Councillor Hughes. All those in favour? That's unanimously carried. 6, is any business arising from the minutes? Nope. Decision reports, 7.1, Elliot Goodger Memorial Park Master Plan. We have an officer's recommendation. Would someone like to move that or ask a question? Mayor Redman?
Move it. I went to Freeling and Williston won by 1 point, and they played Tanunda, and it was actually a really good game, and so I'm more than happy to move this, and I don't wish to speak about it. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you, Mayor Redman. Councillor Hennessy?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm happy to second it. I thank the staff for the work they've put into this. Again, lots of details, setting a really good pathway of what we're trying to achieve. Again, we all know the importance of having a master plan because it sets us up, but I guess none of us are under any illusion that this will be a quick process. The figures quoted are eye-watering in some cases, and certainly the whole thing needs to fit within our long-term financial plan. But get that said, I think it's at least a very clear plan of what we want to do. I think there's been some excellent community engagement, and I like the fact that we're noting that certain, there will need to be ongoing discussions with various groups, especially as I say, we know that this is going to take some time, years, to implement. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hennessy. I might ask a quick question to Bryce, because I know that he has some information on this, but just around the figures, whether that's comparable to other projects we've done, and also if you could update us about the staging and the way that this specific master plan's been done.
Through the Chair, yes. So in relation to the cost estimate that's provided in the plan, in the report here, $43 million. So for comparison points, Carbeathan Master Plan, when that was adopted in July 2020, was 46.7, and that was the cost at that time, so without escalation. So it is comparable in terms of it being a large regional precinct and having that sort of price tag with it. It does sort of indicate that all areas of the master plan contribute to that cost there, not only the buildings, but the car parking and all the stormwater and all of the hidden services and the hidden costs that come with those things there, to provide a really, I guess, comprehensive look at what the cost there is. So going forward in terms of the implementation of this, and it is slightly different with this plan relative to the last two that council's adopted, which did have staging implementation within the actual plan there. Given council's undertaking the sport and community rec facility plan at the moment, and that is a holistic town-wide perspective around our priorities and staging and timelines around that, it was felt that it was inappropriate to put a timeline around this plan here while we're then in the coming months looking at that from a town-wide perspective. It is just to do that once and do that comprehensively.
Thanks, Bryce. I think that gives a good, clear picture. Councillor Koch?
Through the chair, I've got a series of questions. I've got about 7 questions.
7, yep.
If that's
fire away.
9 actually, if that's okay, through the chair.
Yep.
Okay. The first one, through the chair, the first one, it says it's creating a regional sports and community recreation precinct. Why are we creating a regional sports facility? When I look on page 27 of 317 of the attachments, it details the costs of the costs involved in a local sporting facility compared to a regional one, and there is more elements within a regional one. Is this pushing up the cost? Also, I'd like to know what sports you've identified will actually come to this sports precinct, and how many have you planned for the year? And thirdly, have you looked at Lindoc recently? I would assume that most regional sports events will actually go to Lindoc. So that's my first question.
Sorry, Councillor Koch, can you turn the microphone on? Thanks.
So through the chair, in terms of it being a regional precinct, yes, it is a regional precinct, given it has multiple aspects to it. So whether that be from community recreation and scouts down in the northern end, all the way through to football, cricket, netball, dog obedience, as well as the community aspects of that there. In reference to page 27 of the attachments there, that is very specific to the clubroom facility and the social facility that comes with that. And as sort of shown on the image there, the majority of what we're targeting that is actually at that local level. So the facility there in that isolation isn't classed as a regional facility, which is based on square meterage, rather the precinct is. So there's various elements that go to that.
Yep. This is a priority strategic planning project. And provides for active as well as unstructured recreation. How does this relate to the upgrade, for example, of the pool? If you look at page 11 of 317, 11 of 317, you'll note that participation rates for football, that's Aussie rules, etc. Swimming, for example, is 3 times. Walking is 10 times probably, and there's a whole range of other activities that are multiple times, there's more participation. Why has this become strategically important, and will this gazump the other recreational activities in our town? Yep.
Through the chair, by saying that this is a priority, it's seen as a priority given that it's part of council's budget as a project to complete at the moment, so it is seen as a priority. And I guess to your question in regards to it gazumping other activities, that very much talks to the reasoning behind why we're doing a town-wide plan to look at that priorities from a town-wide perspective, to look at all of the activities, whether they be structured or unstructured, about what council's priorities are from a short-term, medium-term and long-term in terms of how we financially deal with those there.
Okay. The next question is the water storage tank. It talks about having water security, for example, with the cricketer talking about water security. How will that tank be filled? Will it be bore water, rainwater, or will it be straight from mains?
Through the chair, it's expected that would be mains.
Okay, okay, we don't need it then. Now, page 5 of 59, just of the agenda, I think you might have touched on this. Is this the cost for today, or is this a predicted cost for what it will be built eventually, probably in 15 to 20 years?
Through the Chair, there is no escalation on that cost there. Given we don't have a clear indication of timelines for elements of this project, it's determined to put forward a cost at this point in time.
Okay. The next one is page 5 of 59. It talks about that this development will cater for population growth, especially in active sports. Can you explain how this will actually happen, considering that when I view this plan, it's only satisfying existing demand, not future demand for active sports? For example, you can really only, I think there's one extra netball court, but you can really only have one A grade team footy, one B grade, under 17s, under 15s, under 13s. I can't see this providing any extra capacity, say, for football, maybe cricket. So could you just explain that comment?
Through the Chair, can you just point out where on page 5 that is, sorry?
It's in the first paragraph.
Nevertheless, yes, by providing additional capacity, both from a netball perspective, so there's a 25%, a 33% increase in terms of they're going from 4 to 3 courts. And it's not only the sports games on Saturdays, but it's also about the netball training nights and being able to provide additional size, additional space and catering for that there. And also in a compliant way as well, both from a runoff and a lighting perspective. And in terms of football and cricket, it is doubling the actual irrigated turf space in terms of being able to have a secondary oval there. So I would suspect that that provides a significant increase in capacity in terms of being able to play games not only concurrently, but also importantly, cater for training a lot better than is occurring at the moment, where training, and in particular for some of the junior grades, actually runs really late into the evenings because of there's a single oval there that can only be used at one time.
Next question is the BMX, the page 9 of 53. What's the cost and the timeline? I'm concerned that the BMX club will now be put into a holding pattern where they won't be confident about investing in their facility. And this domino has to fall first before any of this happens. So so can you give me a timeline about where that's going to happen? And has there been any commitments from anybody, like AusCycle, provide any funds? Because it's probably 3 million, I don't know. Could you give me a price and timeline? Because otherwise it just puts the BMX club in a holding pattern for the next 20 years probably.
So through the Chair, as we've sort of laid previously, at this point I can't give a cost to that there because we haven't developed up a plan. There's no actual determination for Carbeath what the elements of that site will incorporate for the BMX club. So that, as indicated within the report here, is part of the process of that plan, is engaging with the club, is engaging with the peak bodies to determine exactly what is required for the club on a purpose-built new site. And I guess that was really evident and really clear from the communication with the members on the night at the track there in terms of them wanting to be involved in that and them having real clear understanding about what elements make a good track and what elements are superfluous to their needs. And so ensuring that we're capturing that there. And that, as sort of indicated in the report here, it is yes, a real unique situation the BMX club find themselves in at the moment, in that they've been part of all of the initial planning for this master plan here, but then through the process have actually found that, they haven't made it to the final plan. So there isn't something that they can tangibly point at. And that's been completely acknowledged throughout this report, this process, with the club and with their members to say that we understand that the uncertainty that brings, but also in terms of what we are doing next is really sort of looking at how we can prioritise the clarity for them to ensure that they have an understanding of potential timelines around this so they can be really clear as to what they are doing on their existing track. What is the expectation in terms of the capital investment from the club to make sure it's safe, it's fit for purpose, and the club can continue to successfully enjoy what they do down there?
Okay. I suppose the last one I've got really is the leaseholder agreements. I don't think it's in this here, but I think previously you talked about the agreements. Maybe could you give me an insight into what's happened at, say, Mount Barker? There was a sporting precinct built there, a sporting club moved to it, they moved out. That's what I've heard. Can you just verify that exactly what happened?
Through the chair, I don't have all the details in relation to that there, but yeah, there was a situation where the Summit Sport Park was built, and it didn't turn out well for what was, I guess, perceived would be the anchor tenant from a community sporting perspective there. My understanding at the moment is that the majority of use for that site over the last 6 months has been by Sturt Football Club rather than by a local community club.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Bryce. Thank you for answering all those questions. That's fantastic. Hopefully that clarifies for everyone now. I would just say we are on a committee, and obviously, you know, committee meetings are a bit more, we can talk a bit more about things, but staff may not have the quality of answers that they may otherwise have if questions are sent beforehand, so just be aware of that. Councillor Hughes.
Yeah, I've just got a question about the site. When you look on page 5 for the costs for landscaping the site and the car park area, so that's nearly $11 million. I think this master plan is trying to do a lot on this site, but it is a tricky site and there's a lot of earthworks required on this site. And I'm just wondering, whether the site itself is actually going to decrease its priority for other sites that are flat and easier to actually use and a lot cheaper to work on, and whether that's actually been looked at any stage of this process.
Bryce.
Yeah. Through the chair, there has been a real consideration in terms of the topography and the landscape of the site in terms of trying to work with it rather than work against it in many circumstances, even simple things in terms of, you know, building the water tank into the hill. That they're looking in terms of using the hill and the earthworks that would occur for the clubroom space there, and trying to, you know, breach those 2 levels there with that one building. The car parking, and yes, is expensive in terms of what that is there. Around that area of Williston at the moment, there is minimal to no stormwater infrastructure in lots of those sites there. So that has been considered as part of this here. And also looking in terms of making sure we're having consideration relative to water-sensitive urban design, water reuse and capture on site of any of those opportunities. But again, it is looking in terms of, and when detailed design is occurring through these processes here, as to what the priorities are in terms of that there, to ensuring that the topography of the site isn't becoming such a limiting factor due to cost. And when you get down to that detail, there are ways and means to alleviate some of those things there. It's just about having that detail and being smart about the process as well at that time.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Hughes?
Yeah, most of it, but I mean, I know that whole site where before the housing development went in, flooded, and it was quite underwater, many years in a row. In fact, it was incredible. So yeah, I agree. The stormwater is a huge issue. So yeah, but I think it's a tricky site. And yeah, I would be interested in the cost to develop another flatter site, but I know most of it, a lot of our area is in a floodplain unless you're on top of a hill, so it's quite difficult.
Thanks, Councillor Hughes. Would anyone else like to speak to the? Oh, sorry, that was a question, was it, Bryce?
So just to add to that, and the last comment there from Councillor Hughes relative to the stormwater and the flooding there at the moment. So we've looked at in terms of all the updated, the flood modelling and also the stormwater modelling there. So there has been a significant decrease in that site there from previous times there. So the area of what is the existing detention basin there is the hub of the low area down there, and making sure that within the master plan we are considering that and keeping that there. But again, it does talk as well in terms of the redevelopment of this site here is comparable to the cost that was provided for Carbeathan Reserve, so that there are still significant costs even on flat areas like that there.
Thanks, Bryce. Any other discussion? Councillor White.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'd like to speak in support of the motion, and I'd start by addressing a couple of the concerns that I think have been mentioned in the chamber tonight, and I might add to some of the things that Bryce has said as well. So I think, first of all, I just really want to thank Bryce and his team for developing this. It's an incredible master plan, and I think, as Councillor Hennessy touched on, the community consultation side of things has been significant. So in particular, I want to thank the user groups, in particular Williston Footy, Netball and cricket clubs, who are obviously some key users, but the other user groups as well. I want to talk a little bit about the infrastructure, because that is something that is one piece of this puzzle that, as we're all aware, at the moment is ageing around our town, but at this site in particular. So I would say a priority, being the change rooms, and obviously the change rooms is one piece of this master plan. That is clearly something that is really great to see intertwined into a community collaboration with the club rooms. I think that's really important, and actually using the topography is quite clever, I think, to create a joint netball, cricket, footy club rooms. To address some other concerns around future planning. So, right now it is really crucial that we have 2 ovals. If you look around at the other redevelopments around the Barossa Light Gawler Footy League, 2 ovals is now the new standard. And yeah, as Bryce touched on, it's not necessarily for actually game day, but also for training. So right now, Williston Oval is pretty much used every day of the week during the footy season, I think maybe except for Mondays, with training throughout the nights during the week, and then games on Saturday, women's games on Sunday, and also Friday night. So it is, a significantly used venue. So like Bryce mentioned, for junior games or junior training to be held earlier in the night or not clump onto one oval, that's extremely important. I think the, Councillor Koch, the stats you found around swimming and walking, that was statewide. I think if we look within our town, we know how important these facilities are for thousands of people during footy, netball and cricket seasons. As Mayor Redmond mentioned, you only have to go out to a game to see the vast amount of people that are involved. So I don't think there's any question in the priority or the need or the reasoning behind this. But I do think Councillor Koch raises a good point in regards to the the format of the games, but that's sort of something beyond council. That's up to the footy and netball leagues, and that I think is something that they are considering moving forward, because our whole region is growing. So therefore, potentially the league may need to change the way it plays, which it's done throughout its history. But that is a bit above our pay grade. In regards to the master plan, I just want to mention that this is a really good piece of the puzzle that will fit really nicely into our long-term financial plan, into the sport and rec plan, into our sporting club working group, all these things that are still developing. So this is a key significant investment in that puzzle, but there is lots of moving parts still. So I think we're looking forward to seeing how this progresses forward. I'm looking forward to seeing how we can put this into action, but do really want to thank the work of staff and the community for their input in this, and I'm quite excited to see how this moves forward and I guess take it off the paper and action it. So yeah, thank you very much to all involved.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Koch.
Unfortunately, I'll be voting against this because I want to be reserved in my decision later on. I have concerns about whether this is achievable and feasible. It's $43 million. I think we will. If this is what's going to happen, I think we will struggle to get the funding. $43 million plus is a lot of money when you consider the constraints of the federal and state budgets. I'm not sure whether the AFL is going to throw much money. At the moment, I'm quite reserved about my support, because I think we could probably not have it as a region, class it as a regional sporting hub, and want to bring in regional events, because that's what it says. They bring in regional events. I think those regional events will go to Lyndoch, and rightly so. I mean, if you look at that ground, it's incredible. So I'm just concerned about the costing, and I'm just concerned about the timeline, how long it will take to actually achieve. I get the feeling, we've gone out there and asked somebody, what's your wish list? They've given it to us and we've put it down without thinking through whether something is feasible or practical, really. Because, you've got issues with flooding and a few other things. And yeah, so I'm reserved in my support at the moment, so I'll be voting against it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Koch. I believe that's everyone spoken now. unless anyone's seeking leave again, are you happy for me to... Oh, sorry, yes, of course. Sorry, Mayor. You're welcome to wrap up the debate. So.
I take on board Councillor White's comments. Staff have done a fantastic job of producing this master plan. I think that if we lobby the federal member, we may be able to get some money. So, yeah, we've had a conversation with him, and yeah, we will definitely be lobbying him. And we also need to lobby state government as well, and local government. So we will probably put in some money. We will have a grant from federal government, and yeah, I think that we will get enough money to do this project. So the Gawler Scout Group, $624,000, community recreation area 3.2, dog training area 3.3, clubber and building 13.7, senior oval 2.7, junior oval and play area 3.8, netball courts 4.1, cricket nets 325, and car park 7.6. But I take on board Councillor Hughes's comment around stormwater, and thank you for Bryce for answering those questions. Yeah, so that's it.
Thank you, Mayor Redman. Are you happy for me to put that now? I'll put that. All those in favour? All those against? Motion is carried. Right. On now to item 7.2. The policy review, public art policy. Councillor Hennessy.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd like to move the motion, but as you can see on the screen...
Yep, it'll come up in
shortly.
just a sec.
That's okay. And my apologies, I have emailed that around to elected members. I'm going to add... Hang on. Okay, it's just being patient here, waiting for the little mouse to work. Right. Okay, so the motion now reads that we not only adopt the policy, which was in the report, but that we have further explanation that this is actually an adoption of a policy is just the first step in a process with respect to the Council's review of the public art framework, and that the comprehensive review of that art framework is scheduled to be able to be undertaken in the next financial year. And an outcome of the review will be that the public art framework, policy, guidelines and links for these documents have met with other council strategies becoming more easily discoverable for the community. Sorry that that's a bit wordy, but for those who recall, this started off, this report was part of a process by a group who were trying to understand what they could do in the public art environment as a community group in Gawler. They found it very difficult to wade through and find the right collection, right information. We had just got rid of the old Stobie Pole policy, and it was an opportunity, and I think Councillor Solomon assisted in how that came together, to review the whole lot. So yeah, the policy is simply the first step, but in the end, we have a framework, but it's a little dated, and it contains within the one document framework, policy and guidelines. So it's actually really hard to find unless you're very familiar with it. So I think in the end what we will end up with is something on the website that the community can find, and for most people I think they want guidelines. They're not interested in frameworks and probably not even that interested in policies. So again, it's all part of this thing of making it easier for our community to find out what they can and can't do. Sadly, it's not budgeted for, so it's going to take quite a bit of time, and I will refer to that. Part of our the staff that work within the CCS, a lot of their work has to be done within existing staff resources. And from my point of view, that means that the time to take some of these things is 3, 4, 5 times as long as some of the things that we talk about in the IS, who get budget bids to bring in external assistance. So I just leave that there, because that could become very problematic in terms of some of the information that we need to get out to the public. Anyway, thank you for your patience. That's the motion I would like to move.
Thank you, Councillor Hennessy. Mayor Redden, you're seconding. Would you like to speak? No? Open right to speak. Would anyone else like to speak to the item? Councillor White.
Thanks, Chair. I just have a question, and thanks, Councillor Hennessy, for your explanation there. I agree with you. I think this is a really good motion. A question in regards to the budgeting side of things. So the current framework was developed by an external consultant. So how does that look? I've noticed that it appears to sort of last until 2025. So a couple of questions, I guess, through the Chair. Was this framework going to be up for review next year anyway? B, does the review involve expenditure to a consultant, or will it be more of an in-house review and you'll come back to us in regards to what you want? That's sort of a question, but I kind of feel like I've answered it. But yeah, through the Chair.
Was that question to the staff or to Councillor Hennessy?
Through you. You decide.
Yeah.
But yeah, to the staff, please.
I'm just wondering if...
Sorry,
we can suspend meeting procedures if people want to ask questions of Councillor Hennessy. Do we want to?
No, that was purely to staff.
Oh, it's to staff. Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
yep,
sorry.
okay.
I was.
No worries. All right. Over to you, David.
So, through the Chair, to answer your question, yes, the original public art framework had a 10-year life. Yes, it was developed by some consultants, but it did involve council staff resource along the way as well. It was earmarked for our review in the 25-26 financial year. We are still working through budget processes around whether we're going to need external funding support to deliver that review. We expect that the majority of the review will be done by council staff, in a similar vein that we're doing the Community Sport and Rec Facility Plan, majority by council staff, but there may be a component of external consultancy required, and that would be a budget bid process, and that'll come through as part of council's budget deliberations.
Thank you, David. Yes, sorry, Councillor, I wasn't pulling you up. I just thought you were asking Councillor Hennessy. Any discussion or any other questions? Councillor White?
No, thank you, Chair. I appreciate your assistance there. I'm happy to support. I think, Councillor Hennessy, your approach here is quite logical, and I think that we need to be aware that, I think you're right in regards to sort of our policies, and we have this sort of, I think, a higher goal to make them more accessible and more understandable for our community. And reading through the framework, I can understand that there is a little bit of sort of many layers in between it all. So if we take this opportunity and kill two birds with one stone, so to speak, I think it'd be really good. But also just conscious that staff are under the pump at the moment. So, but I assume what you're trying to do here, Councillor Hennessy, is set the scene early on so that if it does take a bit longer, by the time that sort of 2025, 2026 rolls around, we can look forward to seeing what we can do. So, happy to support it in its current state.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other discussion? Councillor Hennessy, if you'd like to wrap up.
Yeah, thank you. And it is, there is a line in the report actually that says it is important that all council adopted policies are reviewed regularly. We would agree with that. It is also important that all policies are easily discoverable for the community, council members and council staff. So you're quite right, Councillor White. What we're trying to do is keep our community in particular informed about how we're going to give them the information they require in the right form. It's difficult. We have a cascading system of documents, but that doesn't mean it can't be really frustrating to a member of the public if they can't find what they want to find out. So, thank you for your support.
Thank you, Councillor Hennessy. I'll now put all those in favour, unanimously carried. On to item 7.3, which is the policy review grants, community grants policy. Anyone like Councillor Hughes? Would you like to move that? Would you like to speak?
Just briefly, I think these, especially these small grant programs, really, really good and really well received by majority of our community. So yes, support the changes.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Do we have a seconder? Councillor White, would you like to speak?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, no, happy to support this motion and again, agree with the changes that staff are proposing. In particular, and I think it was Deputy Mayor Davies that brought up about raising the $1,000 limit. I think it's fair to raise it to $1,500 just considering the rise of costs at the moment, and many community projects, that cost affects them as well. So I think that's really good, but of course it's still broad enough that it leaves the decision in the selection panel or who review the application. So I think that's a good, good review and happy to support.
Any other discussion? No. Are you happy for me to put that, Councillor Hughes? I'll put that. All those in favour? That's unanimously carried. On now to item 8.1, which is the Home Assist update. Would anyone like to move that? Councillor Hughes?
Yeah, happy to move it, and yeah, thank the staff for the really thorough report. It is a really important service that councils do provide, and yeah, they're probably underfunded, but do as much as they can. So yeah, it's really good to see the statistics and graphs and everything else as well. But yeah, it's a good report. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Do we have a seconder for this report? Mayor Redmond, would you like to speak? No. Any other discussion? Councillor Kosh?
Chair, I've got a question. Over the years, I think the model has changed for Home Assist, and there was some toing and throwing over the last couple of years. I'm just wondering where we're up to with that.
Through the Chair, there hasn't been any definitive response. Yeah, there's just been a trickle of information come out recently where they're reviewing where each service type sits, and that's literally come out in the last week. But the new model's supposed to be starting June next year, but that doesn't incorporate our program yet until the 1st of July 2027 is the earliest we'll transition. So they're still fine-tuning all of those processes. It has.
Thanks, Anna. Councillor Hennessy?
Yeah, seriously, this has been going on years. 12 years that I can, and it leaves our staff and our community in this type of temporary, unsure situation. And as we are going in the next short while, we're reviewing our services and looking at them. Although this is federally funded and covers its cost, it still has other factors on our business. So it is really frustrating. So I guess I look forward to further details of the Aged Care Quality and Safety Act coming through, but if there was some way that we could indicate that sooner rather than later would help us with our forward planning, I think that would be to be encouraged in whatever way we can, assist the feds to let us know what's happening. It goes on and on and on, and from my point of view, it seems to lurch from year to year, which must be very difficult for forward planning by the staff.
Thank you, Councillor Hennessy. Any other discussion or questions? No? If there's none, Councillor Hughes, are you happy for me to put that? I'll put that. All those in favour? That's unanimously carried. Moving on now to 8.2, Visitor Information Centre Annual Update. Do we have a mover for the officer's recommendation there? Councillor White, would you like to speak?
Thanks, Chair. Just to say thanks, staff, for their input in the comprehensive report. It's good to see that the Visitor Information Centre is still a very valued piece of our community for visitors. Obviously, there's a few sort of saddening things in regards to our volunteer numbers dropping over previous years, as well as visitation. Although I think many of that it's not an isolated issue to us. That's a bigger issue. But I think, it sort of sometimes can be a forgotten service that we provide because it's not really necessarily directly benefiting our community in that ratepayer sense, but actually visitors. But I do think it is extremely important, and the volunteers and staff that are there are extremely passionate about our town and our community, and just want to take the opportunity to thank them for their continued support of this of the VIC. And if there is anything moving forward, I guess that we need to look at how we can support it better in regards to those dwindling voluntary numbers. I'm sure that all of us would be happy to have those discussions, but again, do acknowledge that that is a wider issue as well.
Thank you, Councillor. Do we have a seconder for the motion? Mayor Edmund, would you like to speak? No. Any other discussion? I'll just add, of course, thank you to staff for the report, and it was interesting and awesome to see the MetroCard stuff mentioned in there as well. That's fantastic for people who are visiting, and of course for seniors who are eligible for that temporary card there as well. If there's no further discussion, are you happy for me to put that, Councillor White? Yep. I'll put that. All those in favour? Unanimously carried. Moving on to 8.3, Gawler Activation Strategy Review, Phase 2, Community Engagement. Would someone like to move the officer's recommendation? Mayor Redmond, would you like to speak? A seconder, Councillor Hennessy. You'd like to speak?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to say again, it's a very good report. 28 replies, not as many as perhaps I'd have, but we've had a lot of things out for public consultation later, but some of the quality of input was useful. What I particularly like is the priority list of things that we're going to investigate. So one of the things that jumped out at me is to improve and simplify the community event application and approval process. Given that the VIC supervisor is involved in that, I think that's great that we're going to go back to the people who've used that and seek their opinion on improving that, because it can be quite daunting when you have to work through quite a bureaucratic application process, and I know that the staff do sit and help people, but I think we can always look to improve and streamline it. So, yep, happy to support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Hennessy. Any other discussion? There's none. You happy for me to put that, Mayor? I'll put that. All those in favour? That's unanimously carried. 8.4, Gawler Fringe 2025 update. I think I saw Councillor Hughes first. Good.
Yeah, happy to move and noting this update report, and I think it's exciting because it actually allows, I think, buskers and others to use our spaces, and encourages that with the change in our busking policy as well. So it'd be interesting to see how Walker Place goes with buskers, and I think it was always something we've talked about for years, about sort of trying to make this sort of stand up on its own a lot. And last year I was in the car park of the Prince Albert pub, and I never thought I'd be in the back car park in a comedy show, and the whole car park was full of chairs, and it was a fantastic event in the car park. And that's just so just the local events are starting to be proactive and do some really good clever things. So I think this is the way to go. So happy with the report.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Councillor Hennessy?
Yeah, happy to second it. Likewise, I thought this was a great report. I'm particularly pleased to see the Friday opening at the Civic Centre, replacing what we had before, but we're going to bring it into this building, which gives the community a great chance to continue that gathering of young people and not so young people to start the Fringe off. And then that leads into the Saturday or Sunday picnic event. I can't remember which day it was. Anyway, I also note with pleasure that other venues and organisations are getting involved now, so it's not just a council. We've activated, but other people are coming on board, and so that shows a maturity of the Fringe celebrations in Gawler. I'm particularly interested to see how staff go about encouraging the activation of Walker Place. I think that's going to take a bit of effort and a bit of reaching out into the community to try and place some seeds in people's minds about how that can be used. But this is a great opportunity because we won't be using it as such, so the space now becomes free for others, whether it be buskers or market stalls or whatever. I really look forward to seeing that come up and be used as it was initially planned. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hennessy. Any discussion on the item? Councillor White?
Thanks, Chair. I just have a question through you in regards to the opening event on the Friday night. Maybe, obviously, this is a new proposal, potentially through to David. If it was possible, could you give us a bit of a rundown on the discussions, even if they're preliminary, that you've had at this stage to what that event would actually entail?
Certainly. So through the Chair, the event itself will be similar to the traditional opening in Walker Place in terms of being a community music performance event with an official opening, but in the Civic Centre itself. And we're looking at actually converting other rooms in the centre, so this council chamber, for example, into an interactive, light, immersive experience as part of the activities. And we're also looking to flow music and performance down into the cafe space. So we're hoping to run it similar sort of times, late afternoon through to early evening, free for the community to come and using local talent to perform.
Thank you, David. Councillor White?
Thanks, I'll speak to it. Thanks, David, for that answer. And yeah, look, really happy to see how we're evolving the Fringe, and obviously we've had discussions earlier in the year in regards to what's worked, what hasn't been so good, and how we can work moving forward. I think, look, personally, I think I'm really quite excited to see how the Fringe in the Park has now shifted and moulded into that family fun day. I think that would be really exciting. I had a few, I know we had a debate and discussion earlier in the year in regards to, I know Councillor Hennessy was very keen about the Friday night event, and I had a few reservations in regards to, are we double dipping here, you know, are we going to run an event that no one's going to go to? But I think the way you described it, David, and some of the discussions that have been had will be a really good example. A really good, I guess we've got to sort of test it out and see what happens. There's lots of variables changing next year, which can be good and can be, you know, in a sort of scientific sense, sometimes not so good. But I think I'm really happy to see, let's actually, you know, the Fringe has been going for 10 plus years now. Let's actually, let's change some things up. Let's see what we can do. And yeah, quite excited to hear that, okay, let's actually use this space that we have, which, you know, I think we all can agree, you know, should be used for events such as this. So yeah, look, I had a few reservations in regards to what that was going to entail, but the way you described it, I'm very happy to keep supporting this and see what happens. And I'm sure that Councillor Hennessy and others are also quite excited to see what happens, and then I guess review it moving forward. But yeah, look, thank you for all the work that's being done in this space. David, to you and your team, and I know Natasha's been working quite a lot on it as well. So yeah, it is really exciting, and hoping that the event next year can be even better than it has been in previous years and set the scene moving forward.
Thank you, Councillor White. Any other discussion on the item? If there is none, Councillor Hughes, are you happy for me to put that? I'll put that. All those in favour? That's unanimously carried. On to item 8.5, Gawler Libraries, a year in review. Do we have a mover for that one? Mayor Redman?
Yeah, I'd like to speak on this one. Gawler Libraries, they go outside the square and they do lots of partnerships, they do lots of interesting things, and I love what they do. I love what they do. Thank you.
Sorry, I turned my mic off. Thank you, Mayor Redman. Do we have a seconder for that motion? Councillor White, would you like to speak? No. Any other discussion? Councillor Koch?
I've got a couple of questions. I don't want to speak ill of the two programs, Auslan Story Time and Toddler Tales. I just want to get an insight in how it was decided to take those programs on board. For example, the Auslan Storytime, I think one community member said, we want to do it because there's nothing else. And then all of a sudden, then the library said, we'll do it. I'm just wondering what's the decision-making process? Because I've been to one event and one of the staff got up and said, "Oh, tell us what you want and we'll organise it for you." And I thought, "Oh, that sounds a little bit too open for my liking." I mean, I've got a background in adult ed and I know how hard it is to develop a program, especially when you're not potentially have the skills in that area. So, you know, the Auslan, okay, and then the toddler tales, I would have thought that was really an education department's role and potentially not ours. So I just want to get an understanding of how those decisions are made, basically.
David?
So through the Chair, Council staff engage with the local community around the programs and what demand there may be for the programs. We also look internally as to our staff capability to deliver the programs in a sustainable manner. With respect to the Auslan Storytime, whilst yes, there was one community member who was vocal for the need, we'd identified the need through our planning anyway from Council staff perspective to provide more diverse programming through our library service. The one person coming was the catalyst to say, well, we've actually got an attendee rather than going by itself. So that program was actually in development for a while before that community person came along, and it's going really well down at Evanston, which is fantastic. The Toddler Tales is actually a partnership program with Gawler District College. So it was actually part of their education program, and they partner with the library to deliver that program. So it's one of their outreach programs from Gawler District College.
Thank you, David. Any other discussion? No. In that case, Mayor Edmund, you moved that. You happy for me to put that? Yep. I'll put that. All those in favour? Unanimously carried. Right, now on to 8.6, which is the Krupp field gun update. Councillor Hughes.
Yeah, happy to note this report. I think it's quite appropriate way to go, yeah, I'm happy with the way that the report's written and the priority. I think it makes a lot of sense, so yeah, happy to note it.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Mayor Edmund, you'd like to second?
I'd like to second it, and I agree with Councillor Hughes. This is a very well-written report. Thank you, David. Yes, it is a very well-written report, so thank you, David Barrett.
Thanks, Mayor Edmund. I'll go to Councillor Hennessy and then come to Councillor Koch.
Yeah, I echo the words of my colleagues, but what I would like to say is I'd also like to thank staff for very much responding to what we've asked and reiterated recently. We need to consider these things in the priority that we face with our current financial situation. So it's not a matter that we don't think it's worthwhile, but it's not the highest priority. It's worthy. We support the RSL continuing to look for some funding, but for us, we're in the process of making lots of tough decisions, and I think the way the report's set out, and with that extra detail, I think that I'd just like to thank the staff for continuing to provide that type of perspective that we need about how we prioritise some of the requests from the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hennessy. Councillor Koch.
Yeah, look, I agree with all the other speakers. It's a good report. I think we do need to prioritise our spending. Like, for example, I was in Borough the other week and there's a Krupp field gun in the main street. I mean, and there's one at Victor Harbour, and I think there's one at Clare. I mean, there's a lot of them around, So I think we have to be a bit careful about prioritising and getting caught up in the excitement of somebody else's excitement. So I think this is a very good report, and I support it. Thank you.
Councillor White.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, David, it's an exceptional report. Thank you very much. Just a question through the Chair. So obviously, I think, yeah, we all agree that, we've got a number of priorities, and while this is a good, sound project, it's not in our highest level priorities at the moment. I do recall Colin saying something in regards to, I guess, the gun itself potentially sort of, it's in dire straits at the moment. It could need, you know, weathering even more out there could do it more damage. Is there been discussion with the RSL around, is there any sort of short-term solutions? Is it in need to be sort of emergency rescued at the moment, or is it okay sitting out there? Or I guess, what is the RSL, I'm assuming if they can understand financial constraints at the moment, is there anything in the short term that needs to be done, I guess, to protect its longevity?
So through the chair, the initial investigation was undertaken, identified rust within the gun itself. That obviously will spread, that's the nature of rust. However, it's not in dire straits in terms of it falling apart, so to speak. We have slightly treated, can't get to all of it because that requires invasive technologies and lifting the gun out and moving it off site for full-blown repair. We have it on our watch list from the graffiti removal program volunteers. Recently they did a repaint of it because it did get graffitied. Regular repaints are actually protecting the gun and prolonging that life of the gun because it's coating the metal underneath, so it is preventing large-scale rust and corrosion. So from our perspective, it's not in dire straits of a repair. And part of the restoration project from the RSL, which is valued, is actually replacement of the wheels. So the wheels aren't original with the gun. The original wheels would have been wooden, and these are steel from a tractor or farming device of some kind. So those wheels have actually got really good life in it, so it's actually going to be structurally sound to support. So a lot of the cost was around reconstructing original style wheels, so that's why the cost was larger. So we're not too concerned in that space to prolong its life. Yep.
Thank you, David. That answers your question, Councillor White. Any other discussion? It would be remiss of me not to make it unanimous by saying excellent report, David. But are you happy for me to put that, Councillor Hughes? I'll put that. All those in favour? That's unanimously carried. Items listed for discussion, there's none. 10 questions on taken on notice. So there's 2 questions there. Neither Councillor Shanks or Councillor Davies are here, so I'm sure if they have follow-ups I'll ask later, but we'll just note those ones. 11 questions without notice. Are there any questions without notice? Nope. Any motions without notice? There being none, I'll close the meeting at 7:58, just under an hour. All right. Thank you, everyone, and thank you to everyone who was watching online. We'll see you next time.